Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Pastor Mike Collier, RHC, and this is a staff pastor from RTTN and part of the Together Coalition. And we wanted to take a few minutes to talk to you about an epidemic that is going on in our cities, in our state, and in our country. And it's something that's being swept under the rug, but awareness is raising, and thank God that it is. Because the Bible tells us that whom the Son sets free is free indeed. And He calls us to be carriers of the Great Commission. And part of that Great Commission is redemption through Jesus Christ, and therefore freedom for people who have been caught up in human trafficking and sex trafficking. It is an epidemic that has swept our nation, and it is absolutely horrible. Some of these young men and some of these young women are raped up to 6,000 times per year. And it's time that you and I, as sons and daughters of Christ, step in and make this change happen. So I have invited Pastor Kimberly to talk with us and do this video. She's of course going to be preaching with us at RHC, and we're waiting for that. We're expecting, but we're going to take just a few minutes and talk to her about this, because she's been heavily involved with what's been going on. How did you get started in all this?
For me, my background is I was a pastor for about 10 years, senior pastor of a church in Pennsylvania, and I also worked in child welfare. And from there, I began to feel a very large calling to work with victims of sexual abuse. And from there, I have a friend who is a pastor at RTTN, and she began to tell me initially about the Zion Project.
Right.
And the Zion Project was specifically geared to work with helping rescue and restore girls from sex trafficking. I began to translate for them when they would do their trips to Guatemala. And on my second trip there, I was in one of the homes, and there was a 10-year-old little girl that came up to me, and she was deaf and she was mute. And she had a little boy about 1.5 years old. Wow. And she was about 10 is what I guessed. She was wearing a white dress that had been yellow because of time, and it was a little dirty. She had the full white socks, the old school full white with the black loafer shoes. Very, very cute girl. And she caught my attention because she was really, really careful with this 1.5-year-old. My mind could only conceive that this was her little brother. There was sibling groups in the home, so and I observed her. She would help him up the slide, and because he was so little, and then she would come around and she would tap on the slide for him to come down. And because she was deaf and he was mute, but he was just happy, he would jump into her arms. And I approached one of the workers, and I was like, "Oh, tell me about this girl's story and her little brother." And she was like, "Well, that's actually not her little brother, that's her son." And everything in me just, I could not even grapple the thought that a 10-year-old girl had a 1-year-old. And then she said that that was her second child.
Oh, wow.
And that her first child, she would have had her when she was about 9. So at this point, the girl should have been probably about 11, if I'm doing my math correctly. But when they rescued her because her dad was trafficking her to whomever, and she had gotten pregnant the first time, had a little girl, the family, in order to hide it, had taken the little girl, had raised her. Then the little girl gets pregnant again, and when they're about to take the little boy away, she completely loses her mind and starts to scream. And I don't know exactly what about that scenario caught the neighbors' attention. They reported it, and the girl was rescued. But that moment marked my life forever, and I've never been the same since. I knew that whatever it took for me to leave, whatever I had to adjust in my life, my job was to go and get her and to help her and help girls like her. Little did I know that eventually God would line my road to moving to Chattanooga and to becoming a part of RTTN. And about a day later, after I moved to Tennessee, then Pastor Devin, which is one of our senior pastors, her and Pastor Kevin, sat with me, and they said they wanted me to move to Guatemala and to help the Zion Project grow there. And since then, I've been working full on, making sure that I could do whatever it took for me to rescue girls, restore girls. And then the Zion Project has now changed into what we call the Together Coalition. Pastor Kevin had a vision, and he was driving to church, and he saw the word together on his dashboard. And the word together split up to get her and he said that God told him in order to get her, we had to do it together.
Yeah.
So the Together Coalition is a place a table where churches and organizations come together, and we're able to bring awareness, to bring solutions, not only here in the States, but also across the world and across our nation. Actually, this Ruach 2020, there's going to be a big rollout of what the Together Coalition is going to be looking like going forward. But basically, it's a way for churches to be able to plug in through the Ruach Global Network, to be able to find out what's happening in other churches, in other cities, in other states. Here, we've spoken briefly about because of the intersections, how high the volume is of sex trafficking. It's usually happening in high interstate areas, rest stops, motels, hotels, things like that even if we don't think about, it's actually happening, like you said, right under our noses. So God has given us the really neat opportunity to be a part of something that it's not just me by myself trying to solve a ginormous problem, but rather a group of people, a group of churches, a group of organizations that are coming together to say, you know what, we're not going to put up with it, like you said, and we're going to try to make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah, the church being the church.
Exactly.
And doing exactly what the church should do, what the book of Acts looked like, with that early church evolving and really taking care of new believers around them. And especially for people in this situation, they may not have much faith to lean on. They may only know what their abuser has shown them at this point. Right. And that's just crazy to me to think about, though, that you talk about that little girl who was 11 years old and on her second child.
Yeah.
And that scene is happening even in Ohio, as we have the situations that will emerge with women trapped in houses and who have been raped and are raising the children and begin to develop this bond with the abuser, and so they try not to escape. Of course, their son or their daughter that they've had with them, the life has been threatened, and there's threats made, and then there's a very weird to what we would consider odd relationship or bond that's developed with somebody that abuses and keeps them in a lot. So what I think is cool, though, is how Zion Project, which probably most people who are familiar with me know about, because it's something that we kind of pumped and something that we talked about, and how now it's coming together as the Together Coalition, and it's where people can actually come to the table and be a part of this. And I think that that's something that really needs to happen in our day and age, because we want to do something, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what we're looking for. We don't want to be overguarded and call the police on somebody whose kid is having one of those kind of brat freakouts, right? And a mother or a dad. Right. But we want to look at some obvious markers and things that happen in our life. And I think that a spot where we can come together and really look at that helps. The Together Coalition coming out and at Ruach, which will happen this October, correct? Yes. Do you have the dates on that?
The 21st, 22nd, and 23rd.
And you can stay followed up with that. And is it ruach.com or is it RGGN?
ruachglobalnetwork.com.
Yeah, ruachglobalnetwork.com. So you can check that out if you don't know what that's about. You want to be there. Ruach is an amazing time. You'll leave blessed. Your ministry leaders will leave blessed. And of course, if you want to be a part of this, you don't have to go there, but it would be neat to be there for the rollout. But it will hit the internet for sure. So if you can't make it to Chattanooga in October, follow one of our news feeds in October. You'll see it. You'll see it. So, but the big question is, so we've said a lot, I guess, up to this point. So for the person that's watching right now, how can they get involved? Where's something they can step in and grab a hold of this and say, okay, I really feel like I want to fight this atrocity that's happening in my city, because let's face it, even where we live right now, just down the street, there was a spa that got raided for this, but 30 to 45 days ago, and so the question is what do I do?
Right.
How do I make a difference?
That's good. The fact that we're even having this conversation is you're already starting the process. Jesus in his ministry, in his earthly physical ministry, was always close to the brokenhearted.
Yeah.
He would always go to the one that was despised. He went out of his way to meet the woman at the well. The heart of Jesus is to be with those who are hurting. And in order for Jesus to do that, of course, it's following the will of the Father, but he was very, very aware. He was aware of the crying. He was aware of the pain. I think that one of the biggest things that the enemy has done in the 21st century is to entertain us with dumb things, the things that really don't matter. We're so caught up with social media and television shows, and our conversations. If you really do an inventory of your conversation, you'll know what matters to you.
Right.
If you're, and I don't have anything against sports and the new episode of XYZ show. I don't have anything against that. But if that's all I talk about, and that's all I care about, and that's all I think about, and caring about pictures and posting, and I just think that we need to shift first and foremost to really care about what the Father cares. And when we do that, and when we become aware of what's around us, then I think that God is going to begin to highlight sections and things that need His attention, that can use His attention. So I just think awareness is first and foremost. And then not only to be aware, but then to get involved with the organizations that are already doing it. If you don't have your own organization, you don't have to wait. Oh, I want to open up a 501c3. I want to start something in the future. You don't have to wait for tomorrow with what you can do today, because there's already a lot of really cool organizations that are doing it. Part of the Together Coalition is that we'll have partnering organizations in your city, in your town, and we'll tell you, listen, these people have been vetted. Yeah. When you give money here, they're doing it. They need volunteers. For example, in Chattanooga, we're working with 2 organizations. They're always looking for volunteers. Seventh Well, and the other one is Willow Bend Farms. One of them has a home, and I speak to them quite often, and they're telling me, we just need volunteers. Nice. Someone to come and sit with the girls, someone to go to school and do orientation. So there's already people that are doing it. You don't have to wait to do your own thing. Come alongside and join with what's already happening. So awareness, join people that are already doing it, and of course finances. Mm-hmm. Everything is run with these finances. These homes cost money. The labor and to create an ambience of healing, it costs money. I was speaking to one of the directors to one of the homes that we work with, and she was telling me, Kim, we just need weighted blankets and diffusers. If we could just have some weighted blankets and diffusers, she says, because when we rescue them, they're so broken. Right. We don't have anything to say. We don't have anything that we can do initially. But she said that one of the girls, she just gave her a weighted blanket and she put a diffuser. She didn't even tell me what smell she was diffusing, but she says she just automatically the girl just became calm. And so even with things like that, and a weighted blanket, I mean, a good one starts maybe $40 or $80, and to think that with something that you would spend, let's say going to lunch every day in a week, fast it and say, this week I'm gonna buy one of the rescued girls a weighted blanket. One of the things that we did in Guatemala, we would do pajama parties. So we learned, and I thought it was such a great idea. Brooke and I, which is one of the girls that was there with me helping with the program, we were like, let's do a pajama party. Woo, this is such a great idea. We were like, we're gonna do nails and we're gonna do hair, and we went to the home and we drove there, and then when we got there, Brooke and I, as the workers, had pajamas, and none of the other girls did. Oh. So I'm like, we felt like deflated. We were
like this is its way.
Brooke, we need to fix this, because in our minds, we were gonna walk in and have an episode from Princess Diaries, and the crowns and the mattress and down the stairs, and it was gonna be great. And then they're like, oh my God, they don't have pajamas, and their pants have holes, and I was just like, okay. So we did this drive. We called it Pajamas for Queens, or Sweet Dreams for Queens.
I don't remember exactly what you called it, but we all
donated as well. Donated, and then we went out and we bought pajamas, and then we quickly realized that they didn't have the pajamas that we really wanted. So I was like, well, so next time we'll probably bring them from the States, some really cool plush pajamas, but something that small. And the girls, I mean, their eyes lit up with their pajamas. So finding ways that with what might not seem like a lot to you, there are ways you can financially connect to people that are already doing it. And then, of course, finances. And then number 4, pray and ask God if maybe He has something very specific for you to do. Because maybe you are the new organization. Maybe He's calling you to build a home. Maybe you're going to be 2.0 of an organization that already exists. So I'm not saying just stay there, but always
Right, exactly.
continue to dream big. So there's a ton of different ways that you can get involved.
Exactly, and that's awesome because for many of us who are going to check this video or who are going to be listening, we have the benefit of having things like weighted blankets, and we use them for the benefit of so we get that better night's sleep. But we think about somebody who has everything literally taken away from them, and kind of almost in the mindset of how you would even train a dog.
Yeah.
Because if you go to evening training, you do not feed your dog before you go to training classes, because then you have the treats for the dog, so the dog works better, it performs better. And so the same thing is happening with these young girls and even young boys, where they have the life stripped away, and then there's the kind of the little treat every now and again. There's that little that carrot dangling in front of their head, and sometimes that's if they're beneficial. The rest of the time might just be a threat.
Right.
No little treat to go along with it. So my point in that though is that we can offer them something like a weighted blanket, and that we use for comfort sleeping, but that is something that we know, especially after you've been touched and violated in different ways, the last thing you probably want is another person holding you tight. So a blanket gives you your own security. Things like the nail parties and the pajamas, something that we take for granted. Yet again, we think about people who have literally had everything stripped away from them, and maybe living in a bedroom with one bed and 10 to 15 girls in it. Correct. You know, or if they're lucky, they have a bed, right? You know, the scenario, who knows what the exact scenario is, but it's not a pretty one.
Right.
They're not having nail parties, they're not having pajamas, they're not getting weighted blankets, and sometimes they might not even get blankets at all. Very hostile situations, very broken situations, and so getting involved with somebody who's already doing it. And I think the problem that we run into oftentimes is we want to get involved with something like, you know, sex trafficking or human trafficking to, you know, stop and end the violence, but we get stuck on this thought process of reinventing the wheel.
Right.
You know, we want to get involved, so we got to create a program, and then we got to go through all the red tape, and we got to go through and then we got to connect with the right people, and then we got to get trusted, instead of just plugging in. You know, even if we're a church, we're a senior pastor, we're a missions director of a church, listen, spread the love and spread the community. That's what it's about. You know, they went from household to household in Acts. We already talked about breaking bread. That's from one house to another house. Spreading the love amongst each other, and we can do that in our society, and we can do the same thing, and we can get plugged into what's already happening. If you're a church in Dayton, Ohio, pastors, we don't have anything to be fearful of your members leaving and going to, you know, RTTN per se or something, right? You're in Dayton, right? Unless they pack up and move on, you know. And that's not something we should really be fearful of anyway. This is God's kingdom anyhow, and people should be being used where they most benefit. But the ultimate thing is, if we are secure and working together in this, instead of defeating ourselves and reinventing the wheel, we can really just run an extension cord over, plug in, and get some juice from what's already happening. People who have already paved the way, such as Pastor Devin Wallace. People who have paved the way, such as Pastor Kevin, who had the vision. And what an awesome story you told there about the you know, the together and to go get her. And you know, I would have just loved to have been a fly on the ceiling, right? In the car, like, how did that happen, right? You know, how that all went down. And then of course plugging in with people like you. And that's kind of what we're doing right now. It's kind of been the scenario. We've kind of been scratching our head. What is it that we do? And so we're just kind of reaching out and saying, okay, you know, drop a little bit of that off over here so that we can be involved. One of the things that we'll do is we're making this video ahead of time for you who will be watching. There are several organizations here locally. I can't remember off the top of my head, so I'm not going to spout them right now, but we'll list them and throw them on here. There's Facebook sites. There's some churches that do well at that. So even missions directors and things of that nature. I'm hoping that you'll share this video and get that out there. Again, not for the benefit of us, but for the benefit of those who need it. It's said statistically that on average, every time you drive by a rest stop area, there's somebody being trafficked in that area. Super Bowl, we think of it we're watching a big game. Huge for human trafficking and sex trafficking, big thing, and stuff that we as Americans just don't realize if we don't know. Who would have thought? I'm just trying to watch. Hopefully my team's playing, right? And if not, hopefully there's a team in there that I don't hate, that I can root for to win the game. But in the midst of all that, you have all these events going on, and some of these girls, and even young boys, we often say just girls, but it is both ways. and oftentimes the prices can fluctuate, but as low as $25 they can be pimped out for. We say sex trafficking, but if we're really going to be honest about this, it's more like rape trafficking.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying money to rape somebody because this 10 or 11-year-old girl, she didn't willingly go out and get pregnant. She's 10 and 11, and for fathers or mothers watching this video, or for grandmas and grandpas, you can only imagine. A 10 or 11-year-old girl is not, she may like boys, but she's not wanting that forced on her. And what happens there mentally, physically, and all the things that just happen to a person physically. Future marriages are affected. Future relationships are affected. Life is just majorly affected even once they are rescued. And so it's so important for us to get involved, and so important for us to be aware. Now, we don't want to walk around, casting a demon out of every kneecap, right? We don't want to be hyper spiritual about this and go too far. But there are some things that we do need to look for. There are areas such as even the airport where people can be moved through and we're not aware of it. I mean, think about this, Pastor Kimberly. We're living in a society where we can literally smuggle somebody through the airport and get away with it, but we can't steal a $2.19 Snickers off of the shelf from the gas station without being busted. Right. My mind just begins to spin when I think about something like that. We had a scenario where a couple guys, they tried to do it here recently, and it was bam. They were instantly busted. Where are our values at in America? Right. That we can literally smuggle a human being through the airport, an airport that I can't even bring a knife or a gun into because it's
more than 2 ounces of liquid.
Right. My shampoo is scrutinized, right. But I can smuggle a human through there. But I can't even steal a Snickers bar off the. Do you have any thoughts on the values of our society, where we are with that? I mean, what comes to your mind?
I mean, it's alarming. It's alarming. And I think the why it is so is because it's such a secretive thing. If we knew that this person was getting smuggled, of course we would all be like, oh my goodness, let's save her or him. But we just don't know. We just don't know. It's almost nauseating. The thought. It really is nauseating to me.
It is. So what are some markers we can be looking for in the meantime in our everyday society? We talked about truck stops, it's happening there. We talked about airports, it's happening there. We talked, we did not mention train stations, but it's happening just here locally, close to where we are, 70 and 75. There's a sheriff and a U.S. Marshal that is patrolling just for human trafficking alone. So it's happening all the time. It's happening around us. It's happening whether we want to admit it. So what are some things we can do to spot that?
I'll give you an example. I like to watch a lot of crime shows, SWAT shows, FBI shows. When I do get to watch TV, those are usually the shows that I lean into. And I am always intrigued by the fact that whenever they're lost for clues, or whenever they need to figure out who the serial killer is, or whomever it is, they always say, get on the phones. And you'll see the people in the background. I just recently saw one of the episodes, and he says, go listen to the tip line. So they're just listening. And of course, 80% of the stuff, it's not relevant, but then they'll say, but this one person called and they said that this guy was acting funny at the 7-Eleven and blah, 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 blah. Sometimes we think that if I see something, maybe I'm wrong and maybe I shouldn't say something. I would always say something. If you need to make a phone call. So things that I personally do. Number one is that whenever I pass a truck stop or if I feel anything funny, I always pray first, because prayer moves mountains. Sure. And I believe and I know that God is more powerful than anything that this world has to offer, has to bring to the table. And then number two, I'm always looking out for things. So for example, if I'm always very self-aware and probably more aware than normal people are just because of my background. So I'm always like, is somebody getting abused around me? But if a girl, or I usually just notice it in a girl or a woman, if I see her demeanor, if she's always very downcast, if I see that she avoids eye contact, If I see a younger person, a younger girl with an older gentleman at the airport, and I see her head down and she's looking everywhere, sometimes they'll try to make eye contact with you so you can help. I'm always really alert in bathrooms, because if they have to go to the bathroom, if they're in the women's bathroom, then the guy's not there with them.
Yeah.
So I'm always like, I mean, I do it more than normal people, but I'm always like looking out to see if anyone needs to make eye contact with me, if I feel they're weird. And then not in airports or things like that. Just I look if they look disheveled, if they appear to be branded. Most, if not all, of the girls that have already been trafficked usually carry brands. So if I see any strange tattoos, one day, let me give you an example. We were looking to purchase some property for the church, and there was a little girl about maybe 10 years old or 11 years old. That seems to be the spot that always traumatizes me. And she was riding up and down the street on a scooter. Normal thing, didn't think anything of it, but because I'm always hyper alert, I just kind of observed the girl because I didn't see her parents. So initially, it was the case manager and me, like, where's your mom? Why are you driving around in the street and nobody's around you? But then I noticed that there was a guy that was staring at her, and almost like, with his hands crossed, very serious. It didn't appear to me that would be the way a father would look at his daughter, and didn't participate with the little girl, didn't laugh at the little girl. So I was like, so I observed it long enough that I just began to stare at him, like, like, bro, if you do one thing, you're done. You're done. Made him so uncomfortable that, he was like to the little girl, let's go. And I followed them, and I saw that they went to the hotel that was in the corner. So sure enough, I was like, call the popo. I'm like, sorry. There's the guy. Have you seen? I never know what happens. I don't know if, and then I prayed, and I was like, it's not my job to get binoculars and go try to figure it out, unless I felt that God told me to do that. But I did that, so I'm always very aware. And if you see something, if you feel I always tell people, follow your gut, man. Follow your gut. Because even if you're wrong, the only thing you're going to spend is like 30 seconds or a minute of your time, maybe 5 minutes of someone else who answers the phone's time, and then that's it. But if you're right, which we all have discernment, and we all have this natural, something is off, then you could potentially be a part of the first process of saving that girl or that boy or that woman from this type of world.
Yeah, and that's huge. And if we're really going to be Christians, which means to be Christ-like in nature, we have to understand that some of the most paramount moments in ministry for Jesus happened in the interruptions of his life.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily on the way to where he was, or it was on the way to where he would go. It wasn't the appointment that he was heading to, but it was what happened on the way.
Yeah.
We jumped to the Samaritan woman. We jumped to, there's so many different things, and the woman with the issue of blood. There's so many different things in Jesus' ministry that we can see that it happened in the interruption. And so if we want to be Christ-like, and we want to do that Jesus ministry, and we want to minister similar to Jesus, why not allow those interruptions in life to knock us off a little bit, and seek the guiding of the Holy Spirit. And, I think something I'd just like to add, and we have here a couple things I'm going to read, but especially for males, if there's a young girl who won't make eye contact with the male, and they're constantly doing everything to avoid you and things of that nature. And just as you was talking, they're going to be looking down. They're more probably apt to look at a woman, correct? And for us as gentlemen, we have to understand that we are, personally, I'm not the problem, but it's like being bit by a dog. You get bit by one dog, all dogs are bad,
Correct.
And so it's the same thing here in this scenario. While we're not calling these women dogs by any means, it's a very similar scenario. They've been abused by these men that are over them, and even sometimes by women. Women will lure in, and there's so much more trappings to work in. We're not going to jump into all those, but you can imagine if you've been abused by a male, and then another male goes to look at you, especially if he's much taller. If you're a young girl, she's not going to make eye contact. She's going to be very awkward around you, and those are some tall tale signs.
And a lot of the times they are very scripted in their responses. So if you start to see that they're almost mechanical, robotic, because someone has instructed them how to answer and what to say and what to speak. And it really is, I don't want to say it's easy to identify, but you do quickly get the inkling that something is wrong.
Right.
Very quickly, because their demeanor is off, their face is off, their eyesight is off, the way that they speak, the way that they're almost uncomfortable around you. We've even seen that even after girls are rescued, that's their default. That's the way that they behave going forward. Even girls that there's a particular young girl that I've worked with now, I want to say 5 years, still to this day, a lot of those same behaviors, very uncomfortable with crowds, doesn't like when I ask her too many questions. Why are you asking me that?
Right.
I'm like, I'm just asking how you're doing.
Right.
So I think that, like, going back to that, you'll see very common behaviors in them, and you'll just notice that they're off. They're off. It's not normal. That doesn't mean that they're being trafficked. That could be other things. That could be mental illness. It could be drug abuse. But if you see something, say something.
Yeah. And we all have been around numerous kids of each age, whatever age we want to pick up, 6, 7, 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up through 18, 19, 20, whatever. And so while all of these teenagers or kids, we know they don't all act exactly the same. There's kind of, we know how one who's not going through a traumatic situation will act. Some may be standoffish, some may be more talkative, but you can kind of tell that this is very different in a nature, and so follow that and allow that to be a leading. Here's a few things I wanted to just throw out there in case you're seeing this. Living with an employer, living in very poor conditions, multiple people in cramped spaces, an inability to speak to an individual alone. So if somebody's towering over them or won't let them speak to you, things of those natures, the scripted answers, the employer is holding all of their identity documents, signs of physical abuse, submissive or fearful, unpaid or paid very little. And so that may be a circumstance where you're seeing somebody on a more regular basis, and in prostitution under 18 years of age is another tall tale. And of course, I guess any prostitution at any age really, but specifically you see a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, things of that nature, probably not something they woke up and decided to do.
100%.
And I don't know that anybody comes to that full conclusion just by waking up. But one thing I want to throw out there, 1-888-373-7888 is the National Human Trafficking Hotline. I'm going to say that for you again. It's 1-888-373-7888. We'll throw that in on the end of the video as well. That's a National Human Trafficking Hotline. You see something, say something. You don't have to go in guns blazing. You don't know what will happen. Get a hold of somebody who can. There's different people that will do that. Police officers, whatever the case may be, U.S. Marshals, things of that nature. And there's some great groups. We're going to throw some links on here at the end. You can kind of search through. There are some ex-military people who are now doing this. And man, I've watched some of their videos and I'm like, I would love to be with those guys. And they do not play. They go in with guns drawn, and they get these girls out, and it's an awesome thing to watch. I've seen a few of the videos, and I'm just so proud of people getting on board. Pastor Kimberly, I'm so thankful. One, that you're here. We've been wanting to have you in forever, and you're here. You're going to preach. You're going to preach a house down tomorrow. And so thankful that you take your time to do this video and to inform people that likely you're never going to meet. And that you've taken your time to do this. So again, we just thank you. We love you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
love
we're praying
you guys.
for you. We're praying for RTTN. We're praying for the Together Coalition. And this is going to be great. And listen, we appreciate you watching. We hope this meant something to you. Share this video. Get it out. It's not about us. It's about the kingdom. This is her heart. This is what she's done. And this is the first time you're seeing her face. So you know it's not about her. It's about the kingdom. It's about the glory of the Lord. It's about the freedom of this people. Hey, we love you, and we'll talk to you next time.
Bye.